the thing is, I'm trying to I'm back channeling some stuff with the Commanders and things. Some people I know there to see if they'll get back on me with that. And then I've just got off with some texts with some folks within the organization, and they haven't heard anything either. So kind of just working a lot of phones, and nobody's really hearing anything right now on this. Other than, like I said, I knew that Mike Zimmer, his interest in the job is legit. But we'll see if maybe in the next few texts, maybe somebody might know something different here.
They don't really have to be in a hurry for this, do they? They can let it go for the next couple of weeks.
No, but the thing about it is, I kind of felt like that maybe some business will be taken care of, because when you get to the weekend, the league does not want you doing anything to interrupt the news cycle for the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So
I wouldn't be trying to rush into it, though. That's what I'm saying. We don't need to do this next week. If you don't get it anything, if you don't hear anything this week, or excuse me, the end of this week or tomorrow, then maybe it's going to be something after the Super Bowl week. They just don't want you interrupting.
Just do some interviews next week, and then you make an official announcement after the Super Bowl's done.
That's kind of where we're at.
We do have 12 candidates. Blogging the Boys did a really nice job putting together an article with the 12 most likely people the Cowboys could be picking from. The question, who do you like? What are you looking for in the next defensive coordinator? What do you want to avoid? And maybe even before that, how much does it worry you now that the Cowboys have to get this done? Before you answer that, Brian did say something in the opening segment, and Wolchuk, I believe you co-signed on this. Mike McCarthy's not going to be heavily leaned on for the hiring process, is he?
Yeah, the thing that you just wonder about with, I think this is going to come down to, I'm not going to say that Mike doesn't have a say, but I want, with the fact, if they were going ahead and doing this, just name Joe Witt the defensive coordinator.
Yeah, right. I mean, it seems like Mike, I think, wants Joe Witt, but I think the pause for not initially announcing that, if they wanted to, they could have done that yesterday, which means that they're not necessarily sold on that idea and want to do their due diligence to maybe find another guy that they do like.
Yeah, that's where I think you got to kind of keep an eye out for what's going on here. That maybe they have some other people in mind. Like I said, there's people that have reached out to the Cowboys about it. I'm interested to see the 12 names that Blogging the Boys has here, but like I said, the one that I know for sure that would absolutely love it, and I'll repeat it for about the 50th time, but that's what I do here, is that Mike Zimmer. He would love the opportunity to be your defensive coordinator.
Well, I think that would be one that Cowboys fans could at least be like, okay, cool. But the thing that's concerning to me is that we're excited about the idea of moving on from Dan Quinn. I just don't know how you can get there. I think right now we're in a holding pattern, hoping that the Cowboys, who do not have a great track record, can find a defensive coordinator as good as Dan Quinn. Well, good luck finding somebody better.
Yeah, that's the thing about it is with this hire, though. To me, if you're the Cowboys, you got to let Mike have the opportunity, being he is in the final year of his deal. But maybe the Cowboys are not to that point where they want, if you go out and get somebody and they're saying, well, I need a 2-year deal. And the Cowboys are like, no, we don't want to pay. We don't want to pay somebody a year to take off if we make a change there. So
it's going to be hard for Mike to sell people like, come for the last year that I'm here. The Cowboys can sell from a much better spot of, if we like you, you're our hire. You're not the lame ducks hire.
Comfort for the Joneses, as we talked about last week, is really, really important.
And they know Mike Zimmer.
Yes.
You don't know, and they've interviewed Ron Rivera before, right? I'm sure they have some type of relationship with Ron Rivera. He's another guy that's going to come in for an interview. And then we've mentioned the name of a Mike Vrabel. Now, that's a guy I don't know how much of a familiarity they have. I think he would be interested in the job. And I think the selling point for a Mike Vrabel is, if indeed he did not, Mike McCarthy, that is, have success, maybe that's someone that can step in, like we've talked about with Dan Quinn, and become your future head coach.
Yeah, that's the problem. Mike's really in a bad situation, because if Mike all of a sudden gets paranoid and doesn't want to hire a guy because he thinks he's going to be the next head, you're already at that point, bro. If they're thinking about firing you at midseason like they did Wade Phillips, you're already gone. It doesn't matter who you're going to bring in. You might want to bring in the most qualified guy, whether that's a Mike Vrabel or Mike Zimmer or whoever you want to bring in.
Exactly.
There's no time right now to be paranoid about your job.
And those names would be exciting, I think, but you need to find somebody that can accentuate your strengths as good as Dan Quinn did.
And I think that that's one thing, and I've seen it across social media. There's some Cowboy fans that don't like the idea of Mike Zimmer because he's an older coach. He's been around for a long time, and he hasn't been with the Cowboys. Hasn't been a defensive coordinator really since 2014 when he got the Vikings job. But that's something you can look at and say, this is a coach with a track record similar to Dan Quinn that has found a way to make the most of what he's got on that defense, find a way to put his players in position to excel.
Accountability, I think, is the number one thing. If you're one of those, if you're a Cowboy fan that doesn't think they're tough, they're not tough enough, and they don't have discipline, and they don't have any teeth to them, Mike Zimmer gives you that. Mike Zimmer, I mean, I've worked with Mike. Mike is a pain in the ass. He really, really is.
But the right kind of pain in the ass that you need.
But yeah, he's a guy that's not going to let things go. Just, and Dan was very much a player's coach in that way. You talk to people in the organization, a lot of respect for Dan Quinn, but Dan Quinn was not going to sit there and get on the players about the way that they played. He was the one that was going to probably take the responsibility about, okay, this was on me, that and this, that, and the other. I don't think that Mike is not going to pass the blame guy, but he's not going to let things just go unchecked.
I mean, Mike Zimmer's only been out of the league for 1 year, right? Or 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah,
2 years since he coached.
Some people will text and be like, well, he's been out of the league. Why hasn't he got a job? Maybe you should do some research and look at the guy's personal life. Just do a quick Google search. All right, the dude did lose his son to alcohol. And he's lost his wife as well. So, I mean, that might also be a reason why he's had opportunities to coach if he wanted them. But personally, he hasn't been ready until now.
The internal candidates here, Joe Witt Jr., and that's a name that I'd love to see. I think between him and Mike Zimmer, you're looking at, a couple of guys who would have a good chance of keeping the momentum going. But this is a big blow for me. Right now, the Joneses and the McCarthy connection gives me no confidence. I think Dan Quinn kind of fell in your lap, and now we're trying to make this hire after a lot of the hires have already happened and staffs have been filled. You're kind of coming into this late. Dan Quinn gets the final head coaching job. Now he's looking to take your assistants, and you're looking out into that sea where, it's a lot. There's already been a lot of coaching movement. I love the idea of Wink Martindale. I think what they needed against Green Bay was more of a sellout to get to the quarterback approach. And I think more aggressiveness with the personnel that they have now could, allow them. Obviously, you're playing a risk-reward game when you get up there. How about Sean Desai? Is he a good candidate for you, Brian?
Ooh, no. I mean, you just saw him crash and burn with the
in
Eagles.
Philadelphia, and maybe his second time around would be better, but I think it's too soon for him right now.
Okay, then you go to Ron Rivera, and I think you're going to get a lot of the same reaction that you got from Zimmer.
If you gave me a choice between older coaches, Rivera or Zimmer, and I guess I'm saying this because I know Mike Zimmer, I'm taking Zimmer.
How about Brandon Staley? That name's interesting to me. Maybe too much to go be a head coach, but as a defensive coordinator, he had success with the Rams, and he does know Sean McVay.
That's what makes me a little bit curious. The Rams just had to hire a new defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I felt like Brandon Staley might just go right back to the Rams. The fact that they didn't bring him back makes me wonder, is there something up with Brandon Staley that we maybe need to look into?
Yeah, he's one of the young coaches that I don't think has many people clamoring for him right now.
You got Clint Hurt, the guy that worked in Seattle from time to time under Pete Carroll. You have Mike Zimmer.
He just got a job. He's defensive line coach with somebody, right?
Who's this?
Clint Hurt. He left Seattle to go.
He did.
He went to go be a defensive
Eagles.
Yeah, he's a defensive line coach with the Eagles.
But I mean, that would be a promotion, so he definitely could take the job.
Yeah.
Mike Zimmer, the 11th name mentioned here, and then Mike Pettin.
Yeah, that's a 3-4 guy.
That was from Mike McCarthy's time in Green Bay.
And that did not end well in Green Bay. But, hey, that's a relationship and a guy that's been a former head coach, which seems like that's something that the Cowboys like in their defensive coordinators.
Yeah, I just got a word from my guys at the Commanders, but they're saying they're kind of in that mode right now, too, that they're let me see if I can get this right. They've been told there's been no hire yet, because I specifically asked about Joe Witt, and they said there's been no hire yet. But my source there also mentioned that they've maybe talked to Joe Cullen as another guy there at with the Commanders. So that's if they're talking about other potentials, maybe that they feel like that Joe might stay if they're thinking about other guys. So we'll see. Yeah,
we are really going to see. And with this organization's history of bringing in defensive coordinators, whether it was Monty Kiffin, Rob Ryan, Mike Nolan, I've seen these things happen where, you have big dreams and big hopes and you're bringing somebody in and the Joneses are comfortable. And the next thing you know, it is blowing up in your face and you feel like you're worse than what the names on the paper say you should be. I think this is a highly concerning moment and something that I think could stop the Cowboys, 3-season streak of making the playoffs. I absolutely am cringing now to see what is going to transpire in maybe the next couple of days or couple of weeks with this Cowboys coaching staff. And I'm just hoping to hell that somebody over there is paying enough attention to find one of these defensive coordinators who is at the absolute peak of understanding what it takes to stop the motion. Okay. The motion run game is getting you crushed. And as Brian Broaddus said very expertly in the opening hour, it's not that big of a problem for the smart teams, for the well-coached teams. The motion running game is absolutely torturing the undisciplined defenses, the teams that have not given the motion its due respect when it comes to its ability to totally wreck game plans. Cowboys not doing enough of it on offense, and it is getting them killed on defense. The guys that understand this are coming from places that have had to defend the most exotic of offensive schemes. And they didn't just say, oh, well, I guess our players should play better. They figured out exactly what it takes to get those wires crossed of those kinds of offenses. And just this last year in the NFL, we finally started to see the results of all their hard work over the last 4 to 5 years. While the McVays and Shanahans were taking ideas from college and implementing some of their own and pushing us into a new offensive era, it was testing the defensive coaches, and it retired some defensive coaches. It exposed idiots amongst defensive coaches that hadn't changed much in decades. But there's some smart guys out there now that have taken what the Shanahans and McVays threw at them, and they're fighting back in some pretty compelling ways. So I have no problem getting an old guy. Just make sure if it is an old guy, he understands this. Now, there's somebody on this Cowboys coaching staff, Brian, that went across the hall, they talk about it the bye week, and helped the offense make some adjustments that made them more modern, more multiple. Whoever that guy is, if my last name is McCarthy or Jones right now, this is a guy that we can't let go with Dan Quinn. If he's not ready for a coordinator role, if he's not ready to move up, this is the dude to talk to, Cowboys. Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, you're out and about, you're in your Ford, you're driving home. Who was that guy that on bye week said, hey, your offense is way too easy and predictable. You should look at what like a lot of the other passing games are doing as far as routes and motion. And they look great for 6 or 7 weeks. I think they made tremendous progress evolving their offensive scheme. Who is that guy? That's the guy that you need to lean on more, and you need to have consulting you significantly in the process to naming your next defensive coordinator. Or, I mean, heaven forbid you got to go outside the building, because outside the building's a total crapshoot. And it's probably going to be an old guy that likes the same scotch as Jerry and Steve. That's with how I'm leaning. You got lucky to have Dan Quinn, a guy that's been to a Super Bowl with 2 organizations and a guy that kept you top 3 defensively. I think this is an epic loss that we've experienced over the last couple of days.
Okay. I mean, it's one where I think people were just wanting change.
Yes, they were mad at the loss.
Right. It's because of the bad taste in our mouth after what we just witnessed against Green Bay. And Dan Quinn deserves criticism for that. But you're right. Over the course of the last 3 years, there's been way more good than bad. I do think if you wanted to get creative, we're seeing teams dip to the college ranks. If you just wanted to interview some guys, Glenn Schumann, defensive coordinator at the Georgia Bulldogs. Another name that's interesting, Phil Parker, University of Iowa. He's been their defensive coordinator there for a while, was their defensive backs coach previously, just won the Broyles Award for best assistant in the country.
Has he been over there 20 years?
I think in total, yeah. He's been there for 13 seasons as defensive coordinator, so he's been there a long time. But that is a program that wins with defense.